All right, today we have two new ryes to review, and they probably couldn't be more different, and that's what I think will make it kind of fun. Today we review the 2024 Michter's Barrel Strength Rye and a sneaky little release from Jim Beam. This is the A. Overholt Monongahela Rye Whiskey. Two ryes to review, one sweet, one spicy. Stay tuned, it's the Mash and Drum. What's up, folks? I'm Jason C. for the Mash and Drum, and welcome back to the show. Like, subscribe, and do all the things you need to do to help me grow to 100,000 subscribers here in 2024. Appreciate it. Now, let's start with the Michter's Rye for 2024. Now, this barrel strength rye is back for the first time in about 2 years. Michter's US 1 Barrel Strength Kentucky Straight Rye isn't just a cask strength whiskey, it's also a single barrel release, which means that each bottle comes from one individual barrel and in turn, a different proof point depending on the barrel. According to Michter's, the average proof point for the 2024 release is about 110.2. Now, Michter's is known for having a very low barrel entry proof than the legal upper limit of 125. In fact, their entry proof is only 103 versus the 125 entry proof that is the legal maximum as of 1962. It was 110 before that, and then was raised to 125, supposedly to cut down costs and taxes on all the extra barrels you need to water down the new make to 110 before it enters the barrel. At 125 proof, you have to water it down less and you will have less barrels to fill. So to go in the barrel at 103 proof in today's market is very expensive, which I think does play into Michter's pricing quite a bit. So why do it? Well, Michter's master distiller Dan McKee says the result of going in the barrel at such a low entry proof, as this product shows, is a richer and more complex whiskey. So my bottle is right at 110 proof. And for those of you that want to know the barrel number, this is 24B0981. The price tag for a bottle of the Michter's Barrel Strength Kentucky Straight Rye in 2024 will set you back $110, and it's available now in select markets. All right, let's dive in. Here we go. So as expected, it's a very sweet rye. You know, Michter's is kind of known for making sweeter ryes, that really sweet Kentucky rye. We don't really know the mash bill of this, but I would expect it's a high corn mash bill. And that lower entry proof and all the barrel sugars it takes, you know, from adding that water to the distillate in the beginning while it's aging, really gives it a, you know, an extra sweetness too. I mean, it is maple syrup and brown sugar all day long on the nose. I think you do get the pepper from the rye spice. But yeah, it is super rich on the nose. I mean, just what you would expect from a barrel strength. Some people like this over the 10-year Michter's rye, which are also single barrels. Let me know down in the comments which one you guys prefer. Are you pro Michter's 10-year, or are you more fan of the barrel strength? So, all right, let's try it. So the rye spice is way more on the palate, especially the back of the palate. That's where you get kind of the black pepper, the mintiness, a little hint of kind of a citrus, but everything is kind of coated in like this caramel maple syrup type of flavor profile, because it is very sweet up front, but then the rye spice on the mid to back palate is just fantastic. So when you smell it, when you're nosing this glass, you may think, wow, this is going to be like candy in a glass, and I think to maybe some extent it gets there, but there really is a lot of good rye grain here. I feel like there's a slight hint of like a star anise or a fennel. I'm not gonna go as far as say like black or licorice, but there is like a hint of that like licorice like type note in it that I get just on the very end. But kind of the citrus and the caramel and everything just kind of wrapped up. And even at 110 proof, you feel like it's maybe a lower proof, especially nowadays when there's so many great cask strength rye whiskeys. But this actually leaves a heavy texture on your palate, and the spice just sits and it lingers, and it's friggin' fantastic. This is pretty stupid delicious. So because Michter's also toasts their cask as well, I feel like there's a little bit of a marshmallow note there too on the palate. I mean, all around, this is always one of my favorites whenever they bring this out. You know, full disclosure, you know, Michter's does send me these bottles. They sent me the Michter's 10 last year. They sent me this one. So just to be transparent, but as you guys know, if I didn't like it, I would tell you. I've done that before with past Michter's 10 years before last year's, which I really liked. But these are always pretty damn delicious. This is one of those rye whiskeys that I think really tends to set itself apart from a lot of the other ryes that are on the market. Yeah, and the more I'm sipping this, the more kind of chocolate covered orange peel it gets. A lot more citrus comes out. Again, a little bit of the mint, but everything is just coated in like caramel or maple syrup, depending on your palate here. I'm getting, I think, more caramel than the maple syrup that I was getting on the nose, but it's a fantastic rye whiskey. Highly recommended. Would I overpay for this one? Not too much. This is a really, really good release this year. I think it's more balanced than we've had in previous years. Previous years, I felt like, you know, it leans a little bit more sweet, whereas this one I think has like really that perfect balance. So if you could get it for retail, I'd say this is immediate pickup. What would I pay maybe beyond that? I would maybe go to $150 for this, but I wouldn't pay more than that for this Michter's. It's just such a good rye whiskey. And for me, to answer my own question before, I think I might enjoy this over the 10-year rye. All right, let's talk about this Overholt. All right, next is this little gem from Jim Beam, the A. Overholt Monongahela Rye Whiskey. This is one that kind of popped up on my radar, and I'm like, I gotta try that. This is a throwback whiskey. When you go back to the 1800s, rye whiskey was a staple for the early communities along the mid-Atlantic coast. Rye grain grew well, even in poor soil and cool climate, so it made it widely available to a lot of people. So it was really no surprise that Pennsylvania became such a large producer of rye whiskey. As you guys know, you have World War I, you have Prohibition, and then World War II almost killed America's love for rye whiskey. The 25-year absence of rye whiskey and well-aged rye saw Americans turning to clear spirits and even Canadian whiskey. So by the time whiskey distilleries could get back up and running, rye whiskey was pretty foreign to most people. The demand dropped and all those great Pennsylvania distilleries closed down. Now, kind of the downer is that when it comes to Old Overholt, by the time Jim Beam got its hands on it, Old Overholt transitioned from a Pennsylvania-style rye to a Kentucky-style rye. Traditional Pennsylvania rye whiskey contains no corn in the mash bill for the most part. I think pretty much completely there's no corn in it at all, or there was no corn in it. So for this release, Jim Beam not only kept it original by going back to the pure rye style of mash bill, which you could find right there on the side of the bottle. It says 80% Monongahela rye and 20% barley malt. But they also source rye specifically grown in the Monongahela region of Pennsylvania. So they also use some old school dark amber glass, which I think is really cool. Gave us a new bottle shape. I really think this is how you make a great throwback whiskey. So the new A. Overholt Monongahela Rye is also bottled at 4 years old. It's non-chill filtered, bottled at 95 proof, and the best part, the price is about 40 bucks. I also will say that the top of this bottle, I thought this was a screw top because I feel like the top kind of looks like a screw top, but I'm sitting there twisting it, and I'm like, oh, it's actually a cork. So it kind of messes with your mind a little bit. So all right, let's go into this one here. I love the details of this bottle. It's just so cool. I love the old amber style glass. I mean, this is kind of a modern throwback, and I feel like Jim Beam did it right. And they price it right. They made it affordable, even though it's kind of a new mash bill. I'm not sure how much of this stuff they have aging, which would be really interesting to see, you know, how much of this 80-20 mash bill they do have laying around Jim Beam. So the rye grain comes through here immediately. This is rye bread, cinnamon, but like cinnamon red hot candy a little bit. There is still an inherent sweetness here though that I'm picking up, which is kind of nice. I really expected this to be almost dill forward and kind of, you know, I don't know, Christmas tree like in the glass a little bit, but really not getting that at all. What I am getting is rye bread, citrus. It's almost like toasty bread with like orange marmalade on it. It's really, really nice. All right, let's give this one a try. Here we go. So you get the spice right away, but there's also a floral component to this, which a lot of the early style Pennsylvania ryes definitely had. When it comes to floral qualities, you know, I'm just not like, I'm not a flower guy. I don't know if like it's like lavender or I don't know, friggin' tulips. Yeah. Hashtag friggin' tulips in the comments, I guess. But I just don't know, like, floral is probably the only way I could say it. There's like this, I don't know, like fresh flowers type of, like flavor I'm getting on the palate, which I know sounds weird because it's something you usually smell and not taste. Yeah, it's like a mix of rye bread, spice, floral, and orange marmalade. I think all kind of wrapped together. It's not as spice driven as I thought it would be, and maybe because I'm coming off the Michter's a little bit here, but the one thing it does have is a really nice texture. Remember, it's non-chill filtered, so I feel like that finish on this one actually does stick around quite a bit. Don't really get it as much on the front or the mid palate, but on the finish, I feel like the Monongahela, that 80%, you know, rye mash bill. You know how long it took me to learn to say Monongahela right? I would like sit there and do word exercises trying to pronounce that damn word right. I know you're all trying to say it right now. All right, let's do another sip here. Like, if I'm gonna compare this to like Knob Creek rye, which this does not taste like Knob Creek rye at all. It's a completely different profile, I think. It's less caramel, less vanilla on that Kentucky style rye. Whereas this, like I said, you get into more of a rye grain. There's a spice, there's a floral component to it. There's some citrus, and then this kind of black pepper, black tea like mix on the back end of the palate. Maybe a little touch of honey too, but for the most part, I really like this release. I just think, again, this is how you do a throwback whiskey. They went out of their way, I think, to create a new bottle style, which I think is great, using the old school amber glass. They made it affordable. It's sub $50. This is a great release. This is a sneaky little release. I did not see this one coming at all. And to finish up, I'll say this about this A. Overholt. If you're used to Kentucky rye whiskeys that are a lot sweeter, much like the Michter's, it's a completely different profile. So this one, if you're into like Michter's and you're into Pikesville and sweeter ryes like that, this one might not be for you. But if you do have a love of rye whiskey and you want to try somewhat of a modern throwback, a Monongahela style type rye that's not going to kind of kill you on the palate with a lot of pepper, a lot of rye spice, a lot of, you know, sometimes you get like an overabundance of like the spearmint or the dill note. This does not do that. This just gives you some nice even keel rye spice. Again, mixed with all those other flavors I mentioned. And for 40 bucks, I actually think it's a really good price point to try a Monongahela style rye if you never have. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this double review today for the new A. Overholt Monongahela style rye whiskey from Jim Beam and the Michter's 2024 US 1 Barrel Strength Rye. If you did, hit that subscribe button below. Please hit the like button. And if you haven't yet, follow me on Instagram. Again, leave a comment below. Let me know if either of these ones you're chasing. Obviously, we have 110 versus 40. Which one are you trying? Are you trying to get both? And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share with. Cheers, I'll see you next time right here on the Master and Drum. Should I mix these up? I'm gonna add a little Michter's to the Overholt. This can't work, but we'll see. Yeah, the nose isn't great. That didn't work. Cheers, guys. See you next time.